Thanks to the visit, we will be addressing issues such as counterterrorism, security issues, our economic and trade relations. And as you know, with Mr. Trump, we have a target to increase the level of trade volume in between our countries up to $100 billion. And we will, during our meetings, have a chance to address to those issues as well. The meeting, which will be hosted by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I believe is of great importance. With the representatives of the business people of Turkish and American country nationals, hopefully will help reveal the truth. And veto and terrorism issues are high in our agenda. On July the 15th, our democracy was attacked, and 251 citizens fell martyrs, and more than 2,000 were wounded. And the families, of course, suffered the pain. And that is why we will be clearly articulating our demands, our expectations regarding this organization, this terrorist organization. For the extradition of the mastermind of that terrorist organization, we have taken many steps and communicated with Pentagon. And we are determined not to stop chasing after them. In our meetings in Washington, other than our bilateral meetings, we will be addressing to the Syrian issue in detail. Daesh, PKK, YPG like terrorist organizations and countering them will be of topics in our agenda. The price that our country has paid in fighting against terrorism and Daesh will be reiterated. And as you know, we have started sending the Daesh members back to their countries, and now there is a serious level of panic ongoing currently, as you know. And so far, we have thought about these subjects thoroughly. Now it is their time to think and make decisions. The last and current stage of the peace Operation Peace Spring, initiated in October, will be addressed. Just like Daesh, the PKK and YPG terror organizations should be treated the same. And about Ferhat Abdi Şahin, we will explain what a murderer, what a terrorist he is, and the fact that they accept him and meet him is wrong, and we will explain these issues through documents to be presented. And our country will be presenting all the documents, all the photographs regarding the terrorist activities this person was engaged in. And the agreement about this operation hasn't been fully reached, which will be a subject we will explain through documents to be presented. Regarding the secure zone, we also have documents prepared. One of them is about the current situation in Syria. All the plans, the projects, and all the works undertaken will be portrayed here. Regarding the secure zone, we will also explain, as we have in this document, the current situation in the region. As you can see, on the Iraqi border, all the way to Jarablus. This region is included in the scope of secure zone, and we have it on the map. And the other subject is related with the U.S. Religious Affairs headquarters to be visited following our meetings on the 13th of November. This center was inaugurated during our previous visit with the mosques, with the education facilities, and many other facilities involved. This facility is a source of pride for us. It is a common ground for the Turkish and American people to meet, and also it is a place where the master's and undergraduate students stay. It is a center where many productive and constructive talks take place. Hopefully, with our American Muslim brothers and sisters, with our cognates, we will have a chance to meet at this center. Despite the foggy weather, we are willing to and are in agreement with Mr. Trump to further improve and reinforce our relations. Despite the political sabotage and many other attempts against us, we have covered a lot of mileage regarding many subjects. In our bilateral talks, we will first have a meeting on a narrower scale. Then we will host interdelegations meeting. Following the interdelegations meeting, we will be organizing a press conference. I believe it will be a comprehensive press conference. Following this press conference, hopefully we will carry on with the rest of the issues on our agenda. Of course, countering terrorism is of a priority in our talks. We are willing to start a new era for the issues that concern both parties. I hope our visit will be proving to be auspicious for both parties. I would like to once again extend my gratitude and respect to each and every one of you. Now the floor is yours. Serkan Kaya from NTV. Following the agreement with Russia, you have stated that the YPG members haven't fully withdrawn from the region. What will be the next steps to be taken about this? Dear friends, as of the current moment, it is unfortunately not possible to say that the terror organizations have fully withdrawn from the region. They are still present in the region. And yesterday in Kamishli, certain terror activities took place against civilians. And in the previous days, certain other terrorist activities against civilians took place. It is not possible for us to say that they have withdrawn from Manbij. Unfortunately, we still see terrorist organizations in Manbij, and partially we see them in Tel Abyad. Likewise, they are also present in Tel Rifat. So neither Russia nor the U.S. has been fully able to clear the terrorists from these regions on the dates and hours they promised on. We will talk about these with Mr. Trump, and following our return back to our country, we will have a chance to evaluate these subjects with Mr. Putin over the phone, because certain similar problems continue to unfold in Idlib as well. Deniz Kaplan from Anadolu Agency. The Foreign Affairs Council of the EU made a resolution regarding the drilling and exploration activities in the Mediterranean Sea. What will be your comments on the recent developments regarding this very subject? The Speaker of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs clearly articulated. The EU forgets one thing. All the officials, most of the officials in the EU, I see, are still new. to the politics, and many of them due to this position of theirs as being new to the politics, are acting partially in ignorance. We are a guarantor country, and the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus is also there, and we as the guarantors have responsibilities, and in the waters designated we have rights to claim. These rights are pertaining to the international law, and the countries who are not entitled to undertake activities as per to the international law are willing to act. But when it comes to Turkey, they claim Turkey cannot be intervening, and they say they will be imposing certain sanctions. You have been imposing sanctions on us since 1959, since 1963. You have always kept Turkey busy on the claims that you will accept the accession of Turkey into EU. Many countries have so far been a member to the EU, but you have never fulfilled your promises for Turkey. And when you had certain comments regarding Turkey, you were not clear. The EU should know that Turkey is not one of the countries that they have known so far. Turkey is now at the table of the negotiations, and this fact does not concern us, or this fact is not binding. These negotiations can end any moment, and this is the behavior you have adopted against a country who has been hosting about 4 million refugees. And many Daesh members are in prisons, in our prisons, and we also keep those in the Syrian region under control, and you should be reviewing the attitudes you have been adopting recently. You might underestimate this subject. The doors might be opened, and these Daesh people can be sent to your country. Then you should care about the issues on your own, and you should never attempt to intimidate us about the Cyprus-related issues. We will not care about these subjects, and we will continue to pursue our journey. About the return of the Daesh prisoners, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs shared a statement, and one of them was not admitted into Greece, and he is being kept in the area and the border line in between Turkey and Greece. Is there a recent development regarding this subject? And the other thing is about the repatriation of Syrians to the safe zone to be created. And upon your statements, as far as I am concerned, there are still terrorist attacks ongoing in Tel Abyad, and not all the terrorists have withdrawn from the region. What would you like to say about these subjects? Dear friends, you make some plans, and some unfold as you have planned, while some other plans are challenged. And here we have a significant struggle, if you will, an atmosphere of war. And consider what people or what groups are against us. We don't need to mention certain names or name the names. 33,000 trucks full of weapons and ammunition by the U.S. Were sent to who? Not to the Syrian regime, but to the terrorist organizations. And why so? So that these terrorist organizations could organize, and with those weapons, against whom will they be fighting? I guess not anyone else, not any other party, but Turkey. So the harassing fires are still ongoing. Towards what direction? Towards Turkey. And who are the wounded or the martyrized? Our citizens. Similarly, our Turkish soldiers are also being attacked. As of this moment, we have 11 martyrs from our armed forces. We have 163 wounded, and from the Syrian National Army, we have 202 wounded, and 202 martyrs, and some 600 wounded. And the number of the wounded civilians is 184. And who will be called to account for this? We are trying to establish a secure zone in cooperation and have been running patrolling activities. But look at the outcomes. Unfortunately, about the outcomes, there's not much of an issue that is pleasing. And an area of 4,200 square kilometers is under control, but also the number of the neighborhoods, districts so far taken under control is 579. We have been fighting against all these difficulties, and we will continue to do so. But before everything else, Russia and with Russia and with the U.S., we have so far run effective activities, and we want to continue with those activities sincerely. And there's a trilateral agreement in between Russia, Turkey, and Iran. This also need to be sustained. Other than that, we have the NATO allies. So far, NATO has not attended to this region. They need to revisit their stance. They need to attend. And that is why the Leaders' Summit in London, in the UK, on December 3rd and 4th is of great importance, in my opinion. What does NATO stand for? What do they do? What does this Article 5 work for? And there are many EU member states among the NATO allies as well. So at the summit, we will be presenting all these subjects through documents. If NATO considers its allies always as such and isolates them or leave them alone, I believe it is not possible to explain such a thing. You will be informing Turkey when certain developments are unfolding in the world, but when it comes to paying a certain amount of fee, Turkey comes in the second or the third rank following the U.S., and Turkey will be shouldering such a responsibility, but when it comes to these attacks or countering terrorism, you will leave Turkey alone. So these will be the subjects we will be addressing in London. The members of Daesh, if these people are stranded in the borderline, or if they have been admitted into those countries or not, these matters do not concern us. They might have a pretext, some other plans, but when it comes to address these subjects, we will do so. Thank you all very much.
We were listening there to the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan. He was speaking to media before leaving for a two-day visit to the United States. Erdoğan says this visit comes in a very challenging times for Turkey and the U.S. relations. He says several important issues will be addressed during those meetings in Washington. The main issue for Turkey will be the war against terror, counterterrorism, also economy and trade relations between the U.S. and Turkey will be discussed. One of the other issues that Erdoğan says will be extremely important is the extradition of Fethullah Gulen, chief of the FETÖ terrorist organization that is currently in the United States. Okay, let's bring in our diplomatic correspondent, Hasan Abdullah. He's in Ankara for us. Hasan, you've been listening to that presser there by Turkish president. Important visit in important times. What else can we expect from this visit?
Well, Nafisa, we heard the president there emphasizing especially counterterrorism, and also he was critical of some of the policies that are being pursued by the United States at the moment in this context. For example, when he talked about the YPG terrorist organization being supplied more than 30,000 truckloads of weapons and ammunition, he said that those weapons are being used against Turkey, and he questioned as to who should be held responsible for the loss of lives. He also questioned the role of NATO in general as far as this region is concerned, and he said that there are a number of questions that need to be raised in this context. For example, Article 5 that talks about collective security, collective defense. If one NATO member is targeted, then it's the responsibility of the alliance to protect that. And of course, Ankara's concern is that NATO has not been fulfilling the very article upon which it has been founded. He also talked about discussing the last phase of Operation Peace Spring with President Trump. He talked about how the YPG terrorist organization has not left some of the areas where it was supposed to leave, the assurances that were offered by the United States and by Russia. And he said that he's going to be discussing this with President Trump. And upon return, he's also going to be talking to the Russian leader to discuss this issue. He said that in Tel Abyad and Tel Rafat, the YPG terrorist organization was continuing to target civilians. And of course, this is a matter of concern. Now, other than the counter-terrorism, of course, he talked about the EU and the role EU is playing, especially in the context of Cyprus. He said that his experience is that most of the EU officials are not aware of the context and what happened in the 70s, and they seem to forget, conveniently, that Turkey is a guarantor country and hence it has certain legal obligations. But he said that those who have been criticizing Turkey, they have no legal claim and are trying to interfere in such a matter. And of course, then he said that despite there being some tensions between Turkey and the United States at the moment, he said that both leaders, President Trump and President Erdoğan, agree that the two countries need to work on the course of increasing bilateral trade and take the volume to about $100 billion.
Hasan, we are watching live pictures from Ankara. We can see President Erdoğan boarding a plane, heading to the United States. Also, during this presser, he showed several documents that he and his delegation are taking with them for the meetings with the U.S. delegations. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, that's about Farhat Abdi-Şahin, one of the members of the YPG terrorist organization. Of course, Ankara has been critical of how some Western countries have been glamorizing and romanticizing some of these terrorists and terrorist organizations. President Erdoğan said that he's going to be presenting a lot of evidence to the United States about the reality of this person, Farhat Abdi-Şahin, who is often portrayed in the Western media as General Mazlum and sort of romanticized. And President Erdoğan said that the reality of this person is that he's a terrorist and a murderer, and the evidence that will be presented to the United States will show his clear links with the PKK terrorist organization. And of course, the United States itself recognizes the PKK as a terrorist organization. So what President Erdoğan is saying there basically is that the US needs to review how it's treating someone who is a terrorist.
And I do want to discuss here a little bit more about the issue of Fethullah Gulen, chief of the FETÖ terrorist organization. Erdoğan says this will also be one of the main issues, the top priority for the Turkish delegation. What can we expect when it comes to that?
Well, we're expecting the Turkish delegation there, especially President Erdoğan, when he talks to President Trump one-on-one. We're expecting him to point out that Turkey has already presented substantial evidence about the reality of Fethullah Gulen and the role FETÖ has played in Turkey, especially on the 15th of July, in which 251 people were killed, more than 2,000 were injured. And the Turkish side has been saying that clear evidence has been presented to the Americans. The Americans need to review the case of his extradition on the basis of legal merit and not politicize it, because the position here in Ankara is that his extradition has been politicized, and some in Washington have been trying to prevent his extradition for the sake of trying to gain political leverage against Turkey. But Turkish officials say that even in Washington there are those people who have been close to President Trump, who've been saying that there is no reason for the United States not to extradite a man who's responsible for bloodshed in Turkey.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Hasan Abdullah live for us from Ankara. We've just seen those live pictures of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan boarding a plane and heading towards the United States. Thanks so much for that, Hasan. To other news now, the Israeli military has killed Islamic Jihad commander Baha Abu al-Atta in an airstrike on his home in Gaza City's Sheyaya district. The Palestinian militant group has confirmed Atta's wife was also killed in the attack and 2 other people were wounded. Atta is accused of carrying out a series of recent cross-border rocket, drone and sniper attacks. It's believed he was planning further strikes.